Hi, and welcome to Off the Record. The real talk happens here. I'm your host, Ali Braswell, and I'm so glad that you've taken a moment out of your very busy schedules to join us for my first episode of Off the Record. The real talk happens here. This is a space where we'll come together just to share conversations that often have happened behind closed doors, or when you left the room, or when you weren't invited to the table. These are the moments that shape professionals, leaders, and human beings. So you may be asking, why did it create Off the Record? Why this podcast? Well, it's simple. One of the times when I was transitioning in my career most recently, I had the opportunity to sit down with a videographer and record a message to everyone so that I could control the narrative and let everyone know why I was transitioning. I didn't want people thinking I had gotten let go, fired, terminated, whatever the word that may have put a negative connotation on it. I wanted them to know that I was moving on to the next corner or the next page within my life journey. I got to share that. Well, during that conversation, I had the opportunity of having a dialogue with the videographer, and he shot it from an angle where it was kind of like an off the record conversation. That spawned the idea with some coaching from my wife saying we should turn that into a podcast. Here we are. Simply put, Off the Record, the real talk happens here is the podcast that's designed to give a voice to those deeper truths, the ones that don't always make the highlight reel. I've spent my life at the intersection of leading, service, and transformation in the military, in corporate environments, as well as nonprofit sectors as a coach and as an entrepreneur. And what I've learned over and over again is that we don't always get to control the narrative. Growth doesn't happen without change, and sometimes change isn't optional, it just kind of gets heaped on us. So today's episode is all about the power of the pivot, because whether we like it or not, the ground is always shifting, the environment is changing. And right now, as you know, in our environment, things are constantly changing every day. You turn on the news this evening, it was different than what it was at noon, and it was different from what it was at 6 a.m. But the one constant about it is life keeps changing. And so we have to constantly prepare to pivot. Sometimes it comes from the loss of a job, or it sometimes comes from burnout. Have you ever worked in a position to where you're just finally saying, you know what, I don't want to go in anymore? I think I just want to do something different. So that's a pivot point, a change. Sometimes it's a calling that you can no longer ignore. I know several people have been called to the ministry that have been friends of mine that for years they called it, they ran away from the pulpit or they ran away from their calling. And sometimes we just get to a point where we actually have every opportunity to slow down and do something that we've always wanted to do. But the key thing is every pivot moment presents a choice to evolve or remain the same. So let's break down 5 truths together about pivoting that I've learned, and not just from others, but from my own personal journey. Sometimes pivoting, number one, sometimes pivoting begins with a whisper. That whisper might sound like, I'm not fulfilled here. I'm not enjoying this anymore. I'm not doing what I thought I should be doing. I know as I transitioned and went in to start or restart my own company, I found that I had a vision for where I thought I wanted to go. But what actually ended up having was me having to pivot to follow what the landscape presented to me. Now, I could have remained steadfast and headstrong, and I did for a while, but eventually I had to take a moment to say, what does it look like? Am I really paying attention to my environment? Am I just doing what feels comfortable, but no productivity? I tell you, as an entrepreneur, a lot of people have often come to me and said, hey, Ali, I think I want to go start my own business. I always tell them, well, let's slow the roll, pump the brakes, because once you go into the world of entrepreneurship, that is a 24/7, 365 opportunity. And it's going to be what you make of it. But as they begin to make that pivot to think about it, I want them to take in some of those things that I'm talking about. What is your driver for wanting to pivot? What is that reason that you feel like I need to go do something different, or I'm meant to do more? And that's when I talk about that's that whisper, what's in the back of your mind that's driving that reason that you're thinking about change. Pivoting doesn't always start out loud, and it doesn't always have all the resources. Sometimes you have to go along the way. But the longer you ignore the voice, the louder it will get if you don't begin to do the things that you want to do. I know for me, it was in August of 23, I just kept thinking to myself, hey, there's more than just showing up at the corporate office. There's more that you want to do with your life. And I had no idea that my pivot would lead me to writing Engage, Invest, Grow, which is my book on how to masterly build relationships that are mutually rewarding, that are started from a catalyst and go on to greater heights, because it was those relationships that drove my life. But had I stayed in my role, I probably would not have written the book. I probably would not have pivoted into my own new business, or as I like to say, rejuvenated business. Let's move on to item number 2 on this top 5. It requires letting go of old labels. One of the things that I found myself tied up with is was in the titles. Whether you've been at the as the go-to executive, or you've been the key project manager, or you've been that community leader or that fixer. I know I used to be called the fixer. That if you wanted it fixed, you absolutely called Allie Braswell. If you wanted to do something new, you called Allie Braswell. But pivoting may mean that you have to give up some of those familiar roles and step into the unknown. So, how does that relate for me? Well, most recently, the world kind of changed around the world that I left my corporate position to go do, which was diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, we won't get into that. That'll be another off the record conversation. But as the landscape changed, I could have stayed steadfast and only looked at, well, DEI is being attacked. It's not going to provide opportunity. What I decided to do was pivot to what other skill sets and what other ideas that I have that I wanted to go out and champion and make a difference. And what I did was I pivoted to something I had been doing all my life since being a young Marine, and that was leadership, teaching people how to put people first. As a Maxwell trained speaker, coach, teacher, and trainer, I had the tools right there in front of me to teach people how to do high road leadership. But guess what, folks? If you're going to teach people how to do high road leadership and you're going to have an opportunity to put people first, isn't that the same thing as saying we want to make sure that we have a level playing field and we want to bring all people to the table to make a difference? But what I found is by pivoting into leadership and leveraging another skill that I had, I was able to meet the challenges of helping people build high powered teams by learning how to create cultures that respect, appreciate, and value everyone. A friend of mine who's got a new book out, you got to go out and check him out. This is your shameless plug there, Chuck Salvo. He just wrote a book called Rave, and it's all about teaching you how to build high performance teams. I'll get him on the other side there with a sponsorship maybe, but I really believe in the work, because the work is about building high performance teams by respecting and valuing everyone. And the pivot, though, that I'm talking about is I moved away from what I thought I was going to do when I left my corporate position into something that the environment dictated. Now, I could have been reticent and remained steadfast, as I said before, or I could go with the change. A pivot isn't giving up. It's really adjusting your stance to move yourself forward and help you gain power. Through that, I've been able to speak on the topic of high road leadership, lead masterminds, and help build inclusive leaders that if we're going to put people first, then we got to respect everyone in the environment. We leave no one behind. As they used to tell us as a young Marine, is Marines don't leave their friends, their family, and their brothers behind. And that's what I got a chance to do in that pivot point. Going into number 3, every pivot is a strategy. It's not a surrender, folks. So don't think that because life comes at you and you have to change directions that you lost something. Now I'm going to share a little bit. One of the things I think about this podcast is to be transparent and honest with you. Most recently, I got faced with, well, what do you do while you're writing the books? What do you do while the revenue isn't coming in? Do you sit there and get sully and lose yourself in thought or in emotion? Or do you pivot and find a new strategy? Because again, pivoting is finding a different way of getting things done and continuing to build your power, your base, and your ability to move forward. It's not surrendering. It's not giving up. It's really taking yourself and adjusting your stance so that you can move forward. I did that recently and went out and tried something that I thought I'd never do. Folks, if you happen to fly into Jacksonville, don't be surprised if Allie Braswell isn't your Uber driver. I wanted to know more about it because I had an idea that I might want to have a fleet of Uber drivers. So the first thing I needed to do was go experience it myself. I'm sure to many people's chagrin that when they saw me driving up in my car to give them a ride sharing as it's called, I've been in many Ubers in the back seat. Never ever would I think that I'd sit in the front seat. Well, I want to tell you, not only was it rewarding in terms of earning some cash, but it was so much fun that I got to meet new people. I got to meet people flying in for business, people coming back home after a long business trip, as well as people coming back from weddings and other things. I'll probably continue to drive an Uber in my spare time because I'm finding it's fun. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. And here's the real off the record conversation. Sometimes you have to do the things that you think you wouldn't do in order to be able to experience the growth and the understanding that you need to be able to do the things that you're meant to do. So, had I been reticent and said, no, I'm not going to do that, or that's a crazy idea, or thought that I was too good to do that, I would not have pivoted into something that I actually really enjoy, meeting new people while at the same time making a pretty decent dollar. Didn't realize you can make as much as been made. Now, I'm going to be careful and not get out a number because I don't want, that good old 3-letter place that's in trouble right now coming after me. Moving on to point number 4, business pivots, adapt or be left behind. I can't say it any clearer than that. We must learn how to adapt or we'll get left behind. If you take a look at from Netflix shifting from DVDs to streaming, how many people even remember that Netflix started out renting DVDs? They moved to streaming so that they could begin to move into a new industry. And now we're watching them just like we used to watch our local stations. We're consuming content there, movies that from all different genres are available on Netflix. And the great thing is we don't even have to go further than our couch and our remote control to access it. Had they been left behind or had not made the pivot, they may be in the situation of, how many of you can remember Polaroid, where you used to shake it, like a Polaroid picture, that line from the Outcast song? But that was real, folks. You used to crank out a picture and shake it until you could actually get it to develop. Guess what? With the digital change, they didn't move with the times fast enough. They got left behind. Kodak was king in copiers, but they also were king in running the film industry. But as digital came on the market, as you're slower to move, Kodak is not the giant that it once was in the photography industry. But they pivoted to go after the industries where they still could make a mark. The key thing is whether it's local entrepreneurs that had to shift the way they did business in COVID. How many people can remember the pandemic, and having to change the way we purchase things? That was the boom time for Amazon. Everything we ordered was still coming to the house, from food to Instacart hitting its heyday with delivering food objects, Amazon delivering every object imaginable, from food to household goods to products that we use each and every day. I can remember ordering food and going to a Chinese restaurant to pick up the food. When I got to the Asian restaurant, it was very interesting to see that they had improvised to maintain their safety and the safety of their customers by putting in an apparatus that will allow them to exchange the food without coming into contact with the individuals coming to purchase their products. The key thing is adaptability, folks, is currency. And when we leverage that currency, if you're in business and you're not thinking about what's next, you're already left behind. I had the opportunity to speak with an incredible CEO of a credit union here earlier today that's exploring how they move forward to move from where they are currently to where they want to be in the next 3 years. And what really came out of that was what was the culture that would allow them to make that what? Pivot to move in the direction to grow from where they're currently at a half billion, close to being a billion, to being a $2 billion organization in assets as they continue to serve their communities. And their community is near and dear to my heart because part of it is the military. Let's move on to number 5. Pivot must have a key ingredient. If you're going to pivot, you got to have people. You can't do it alone. I'm here to tell you that finding mentors or accountability partners or coaches or liaisons that can help you to move in the right direction. Because otherwise, isolation can distort reality. You know, one of the things that one of the reasons I did the Uber thing was to get out of the house and you find something to do with my time when I wasn't writing, when I wasn't speaking, when I wasn't coaching. Now, a lot of people think that I'm coaching and writing all the time, but there were gaps. And what I found is in those times where I had no people interaction. Now I had a great Cavapoo puppy named Ginger, but even when Ginger was tired of me, I found myself isolated. And that's when reality can get distorted. That's when you can start to look at the things going on in your life, not as opportunities, but as setbacks. Something I learned a long time ago was that a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. And that's what I did by pivoting to go do other things and continue to move my business forward, change the strategy. That consultants on DEI weren't being sought after, but consultants on how to build inclusive cultures and cultures of belonging and empowerment and engagement was definitely there. So by changing my vocabulary, I was still out doing the same work, but being able to do it in the right intentions to be able to continue to do the building of my organization, my company, to engage with speaking engagements where I can make meaningful impact, and to be able to have that currency that allows me to build those mutually rewarding relationships. Real support will sharpen your strategy and build your confidence. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment here to say one of the people that makes all the difference and is my biggest cheerleader and coach, and probably puts up with me more than anybody, is my wife, my spouse. Now, a lot of us are in situations where we may be by ourselves, but we've got that one person or those mentors that can help us get there. And mentoring is a lifetime engagement. I can remember one of my young mentees when he was in high school was full of energy and thought he could accomplish any and everything, didn't really need help. Well, guess what? That was almost 10 years ago that we engaged. Actually, it was over 10 years ago that we first engaged, and we're still mentoring. And guess what? I learned from him while I'm pouring into him as he pours back into me. Mentors are people who are going to tell you the truth and not exactly what you want to hear. And you should find mentors that help meet some of the needs and the weaknesses that you may have in your life journey that you can shore up through other experiences, and through the others' experiences, be able to plan your road ahead, your roadmap to help you get to the next place and help you sharpen your strategy and help you build your confidence. And then they're there to salute you as you cross the finish line. I can remember when this young man finished Morehouse College and graduated. Now, he chose a fraternity that wasn't in alignment with mine, but we'll leave that there. But you know what? His pride, his ability to get things done, the way that he moved, even his walk and his talk was such an opportunity for me to see a great reward in pouring into him as a young man in 10th grade, and now seeing him as an executive in the nonprofit arena and continuing to stride and move ahead. It's all about changing things. Now, a little more about that young man's story without giving his name away is he could have given up. He had some challenges thrown at him. But what did he do? He chose to pivot. He chose to take what life had dealt him, learn from those challenges, gain the support he needed to get the confidence to be able to overcome. He moved from a situation where he had been homeless in high school to where now he's thriving after with the Morehouse College education and going after even more. So proud of him. Just wanted to shout him out because that's real. That's what this podcast is all about. See, folks, what happens is what is the conversation that happens like I'm just having with you about this young man when you're not in the room? What does your reputation say that makes people want to extend themselves and partner with you, to sponsor you into rooms that you may never ever get into, and then hang around and have some ownership in your life journey? That's what Engage, Invest, Grow is all about. If you're interested in purchasing it, please go to the website, braswellglobal.com. Click the button. You choose it personally. I'll sign it if you want it. Otherwise, you can order it off of Amazon or Barnes and Noble. There's a shameless plug and the sponsorship for this hour. But folks, what I really wanted to do is to tell you about those 5 keys. And then just to go over them again, number 1 is pivoting begins with a whisper, a thought, an idea in your mind that says, I may not be satisfied, I may not be fulfilled with what I'm doing, and I need a change. I feel stuck. I can remember when I wrote Rekindling the Passion, Restoring the Joy and Purpose to Your Life. I was 35 years old, and my mentor said, oh, don't worry about it, just going through midlife. Well, folks, I can do the math. I was going to live past 70, and I'm pressing forward to that right now. So it wasn't the fact that I had hit a midlife crisis, it's that I had lost a passion for what I was doing. I was stuck. But by making a pivot, I was able to move myself forward by learning how to journal and write down my thoughts and then turn those into action plans. I was able to get things done and move myself into a better place for me and my family. Number 2, again, was pivoting requires letting go of old labels. It doesn't matter what you were. You know, I remember in the Marine Corps, we used to have people transition from different duty stations. And the first thing they say, well, back at this duty station, we did it this way. And everybody would look and go, well, you're not there anymore. You're here. So I want to tell you, you're not where you were 5, 10 years ago. You're where you are now. And what are you going to take from those experiences that allows you to make the pivot to move to the next level? Every pivot, number 3, every pivot is a strategy, not a surrender. Please don't believe that life is throwing you nothing but negatives. Look at the glass as half full. Look at, if I need to pivot, I need to come up with a new strategy so I can get to the next win. Number 4 was business pivots. If you're going to be in business, you got to be able to be adaptable or you'll get left behind. Remember that adaptability is currency. It's something that you can use to adapt and move yourself in a position to take advantage of the markets and the opportunities ahead of you. And lastly, it's about number 5, pivot does need people. You got to have other people to help you. Learn from others' experience. Learn from others' experience and then be able to move ahead into things that are happening each and every day. In closing, as we come to the end of this first 25 minutes, I promise to come to you and be with you for 25 to 30 minutes weekly. I want to tell you that I want to keep it real with you and say that everyone has challenge. Everyone needs a mentor, that coach, that buddy, that friend that they can go to, talk with, and come up with a strategy to move forward to success. So here's my off the record question for you today. Where are you in your life right now? And what do you need to do to pivot? What are you holding on to that no longer provides value or serves you or helps you to get to where you're headed? And who do you need to be around to make the move with boldness and wisdom? You know, great mentor of mine who's written too many books to count, John Maxwell, says, his name's John Maxwell and I'm your friend. But the key thing I took away from John Maxwell's teaching is John would ask a question, and this is my question to you. Who do you need to know And who do you need to have around you to make the moves that will embolden you and give you the wisdom so that you're successful? I want you to write down those questions, answer them for yourself. And if this episode happened to spark something in you, I want to hear from you. You can go on my Facebook page, Off the Record, The Real Talk, or you can come hit me up on Instagram or send me an email at otrwithally@gmail.com. otrwithally@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to be involved. I'd love to help you pivot to your next success. Follow us on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Spotify. And please leave a review. If you subscribe, go out to YouTube, subscribe. Help me grow this. Help me reach the next person that needs to have an off the record conversation. Let's keep the real talk going. Next week, I'll be diving into how to recognize opportunities in unexpected places. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Going to have an incredible guest that's going to talk about her transition from being with one of the top names in the medical field to moving and following her pivot to her passion and the fulfillment, and doing that not at the suspected age in your 20s and 30s, but doing that as a well-seasoned professional and the reward she's gained from that. So tune in next Wednesday and every Wednesday at 6 p.m. My name's Allie. I'm everybody's favorite uncle, and I love having these conversations with you and being able to do the things that make a difference in our lives by having those off the record conversations. This is where the real talk happens. We'll see you next week.